know, wherever I go in the world, the first thing I want to do is go into the market. Because in the market is where I'll find out what ingredients this cuisine specializes in. But even more important, I'll find out what proportion they use those ingredients in. Because whatever they have an abundance of, that's what they're cooking the most with. And certainly that's the case here in the Lucas de Galvez market in downtown Merida, Yucatán. I've stopped first at one of the multitude of chili stalls, fresh chili stalls here. And the big focus is these habanero chilies, because this is the land of habanero. You find them in orange and you find them in green, something we don't see very much in the United States. These are the xcatic chilies, which are like a hot banana pepper. And then these little lobed chilies here, that is the chile dulce, the sweet pepper. And they look like a little lobed version of our green peppers, but their flavor is a lot more concentrated. The beautiful abundance here at the fresh vegetable stall is really cool because they've got all these ingredients that we don't see in the United States. Let's start here with the white cucumber, which is the common one here. This avocado is the Caribbean avocado, and it's really light and sweet in flavor, but not very creamy. These are a type of lima bean that's called ibes here, and they sell them in the fresh state. The greens here, it's not spinach. This stuff is called chaya, but it's cooked sort of like that. A whole host of herbs, from the tiny little epazote that they use here, tiny cilantro, a lot of hierba buena or spearmint, and then of course, this is the naranja agria, the sour orange that seasons so much of the cuisine here. Now, when you get to the spice stalls, well, you know you're definitively in the Yucatan Peninsula. In other parts of Mexico, this stall might be filled with all kinds of dried chilies, but here it's all about these three distinctive seasoning pastes. There's the black one that's made from burnt chilies, honest to goodness. The one that they call blanco, but it's kind of a tan color that's got all different kinds of spices in it. And then the one that's red, or kind of an orangey red, that is made from the little achiote seeds. They're all ground with a whole host of herbs and spices. It's just kind of almost dizzying, but it tells you that you're in the Yucatan Peninsula. So I was interested in finding out about how they make those spice pastes, those recados as they're called here in the Yucatan. My chef friend Miriam Peraza said that she could take me to a stall in the market where they're made. The mill we visited could not have been more traditional. They've been grinding recados here for 42 years. Buenos días, ¿cómo están? Hola, buenos días. Buenos días, señora. When we arrived, they were mixing up the ingredients for recado rojo. Now, it's a combination of achiote seeds, salt, spices, herbs, and garlic that's stoned ground with a little bit of acid.
Tiene un sabor ya rico.
Es como explosivo.
Sí.
Recado rojo typically has a robust, earthy flavor, but this fresh ground stuff was a real revelation. They were also making a recado blanco, and that's the one that's often cooked with beef. That green-gray color, it comes from all the garlic, spices, and herbs that make up that mixture. After exploring the wide world of Yucatecan ingredients at the market, we headed over to Miriam's restaurant, Manjar Blanco, where she stepped me through several of the most classic dishes of the area. Her first preparation, queso relleno, began by scooping out the center of a large ball of Edam cheese. Next, she started the filling, ground pork, cooked with the same spices that you would use in recado blanco. And then she added raisins, olives, capers, those sweet chilies from the market, along with some onions and tomatoes. That whole mixture was gently stirred together before adding the final ingredient, chopped almonds. The stuffing went into the cheese ball, then the whole thing was wrapped in cheesecloth and set over simmering water to cook while Miriam began the next course, the iconic lime soup, sopa de lima. The soup began with more onions, chile dulce, and tomatoes all sautéed together in a little oil. As those were starting to soften, she added the broth. While that simmered together, she peeled and chopped a good amount of fresh limas, that unique variety of aromatic sour lime that's iconic here in Yucatecan cuisine. She added those to the pot too. Now this is the flavorful broth base she spooned into a bowl with coarsely shredded chicken, a handful of tortilla strips, and a slice of fresh lima.
Con una masa nixtamalizada.
Sí. Watching Miriam cook is like reading an encyclopedia of traditional Yucatecan food. And what a great experience to be able to cook alongside her as she made the final dish, panuchos of Cochinita pibil. We started by making thick tortillas of fresh ground corn masa and baking them on the griddle. When they puffed up, we took them off the heat and split them to open up a pocket. She filled those with a puree of black beans, then fried them in a skillet of hot oil. And onto those crispy panucho bases went a handful of shredded cochinita, the slow-cooked pork that's been marinated in classic recado rojo. And on went some pickled red onions and a few drops of spicy habanero salsa. ¿Puedo?
Puedo, por supuesto.
Okay. Increíble. Perfecto.
Es un verdadero panucho.
I just love cooking with traditional cooks because there's something almost magical about their self-assurance in the kitchen. And you know, every dish comes out like everything about it is in complete harmony. That's what I love about cooking with traditional cooks. Just before it was time to serve, Miriam unwrapped that stuffed cheese and cut a wedge of it. Then she spooned on two very different sauces. The first, a creamy-looking sauce made from rich chicken broth thickened with corn masa, and then a tomate frito with capers and olives. It was time to eat. That's fantastic. It's so interesting how traditional food reflects culture and history and a sense of place. I mean, think about the panucho with all of its indigenous influences from the achiote and the corn. The sopa de lima, it reflects Spanish tradition with limes that came from Asia. And then this crazy queso relleno dish that is Dutch cheese, yes, Dutch cheese, that's filled with a kind of pate or meatloaf that's got all these Lebanese-like spices in it because it was such a huge Lebanese influence in the cuisine here a century or so ago. But you know what? It all tastes perfect. Perfectly Yucatecan because it's been perfected over centuries. There's a really popular dish in the Yucatan called papadzules. And when I describe it to you, if you haven't been raised eating it, it may sound like one of the strangest dishes ever. It looks a little bit like an enchilada. So it's a tortilla that is rolled around hard-boiled egg, and then it's covered with this velvety, creamy textured pumpkin seed sauce, and then it's splashed with a roasted tomato sauce. Odd as it may seem, you just have to taste it. It's so incredibly delicious, and I'm going to walk you through how you make it. And we're going to start with that roasted tomato sauce part of it. I've got some ripe tomatoes here, and I'm going to put them onto a baking sheet. This one's covered with some foil. That just makes easy cleanup. And I'm going to roast the tomatoes under a preheated broiler. I have the rack up as high as it will go. It'll take about 5 or 6 minutes for them to blacken and blister, and we'll flip them over 5 or 6 minutes on the other side. While those are roasting, I'm going to saute half an onion in olive oil over medium heat. When the tomatoes are roasted, remove them from under the broiler, let them cool off a little bit till you can handle them, and then pull off the blackened skins. Put the tomatoes into a blender jar and blend them till you have a coarse puree. Now, the blended tomatoes are going to go into the brown onions. Give there a nice little crackle. Stir that around and let it start reducing. But we're going to give it the seasonings that really make this into a Yucatan flavored dish, and that would be habanero chili. So this may be too hot for some people. If you like spicy food, chop it up a whole lot. If you don't like very spicy food at all, make a little slit in the side of it and let it just simmer as a whole chili with the slit in this sauce. I like sort of medium spicy food, so I'm gonna cut it in half and then just drop the 2 halves in there and let that simmer. This is a very multi-purpose sauce called tomate frito in the Yucatán. It's delicious on eggs. Make a huevos rancheros, Yucatán style, with this kind of a sauce, and everybody will really love that. I'm gonna move the sauce over here, turn it on to a medium low, and let that simmer away while we go to the next stage, which is to prepare the pumpkin seed sauce. I'm gonna put a skillet here again over this kind of medium heat, and I have some untoasted pumpkin seeds. Now, it's easy to find toasted salted pumpkin seeds, and they make a great snack. For this particular preparation, you're probably better off to make it with untoasted pumpkin seeds that you toast yourself. So I've got my untoasted pumpkin seeds here. And put them over the medium heat. This is going to take a few minutes, and we're going to let them heat until we hear the first pop. They will pop from flat to that sort of a shape, and that will indicate that they have changed their starch sort of makeup in there, and they're going to have a beautiful flavor. We don't want them to be too toasted. While these are getting warm and starting to toast, I'm going to make the broth that goes into this, and that starts with water. I'm going to measure 3 cups of water here and pour that into our pan. Turn that on to about a medium high here because we're going to let that come to a simmer. And to it we're going to add epazote. This is one of the classic flavors of this. So I'm going to put a couple of sprigs of epazote into this broth. I'll put another little piece of onion in there that I'm going to chop up as well. We're going to strain this out so it can be a rough chop on that. And then our seasoning for it will be 2 teaspoons of salt. We're going to let this come to a simmer and then turn it off and let it steep for 15 minutes, then strain out the solids. We're ready to strain and blend. And pour that directly into the blender jar. Get these guys out of here. And now these pumpkin seeds. Wow, I wish you could smell what they smell like, because there's nothing better than toasted pumpkin seed aroma to fill the kitchen. Now they've cooled off quite a bit now. And then put the blender jar back on the base, and we're gonna blend it until we have a smooth puree. Let's see what this looks like. I like to just rub a little bit through my fingers there. It's really very incredibly velvety. I'm going to pour it back into the pot that we made the broth, but it's a little thick. It should be the consistency of a nice cream soup, I think. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it and then correct the seasonings. Yeah, that's about the right consistency now. That looks really beautiful. Now a little bit of salt, and sprinkle a little bit of salt over this tomato sauce. That should be enough to season it. The temperature underneath this sauce to rewarm it should be very low. You never ever want it to come to a boil. And now on to these hard-boiled eggs. They need to be chopped up for the filling. So I'm using an old-fashioned pastry blender. You can just chop them with a knife if you wanted to. You don't have to be very meticulous about it. Okay, and now last thing, tortillas. We've got to warm them so that they're ready to roll around the hard-boiled egg filling, and I'm going to show you my way of doing it with store-bought tortillas. I like to use the microwave as a steamer to kind of reconstitute them because they're usually a little bit dry. So paper towels are going to be the moisture in this steamer, and I like to just get them a little bit wet and then wring them out and lay a stack of 12 tortillas, put that into a bag. 12 is about as many as you can do in this microwave way of heating the tortillas. Put them in there. You notice I didn't seal the bag. If you do, it'll balloon way up as steam is created. Let these heat for 1 minute and then let them sit for 1 minute to finish that heating process. And then you're ready to assemble the papadzules. One of the most iconic dishes from the Yucatán is Cochinita pibil, a whole pig that's marinated in recado rojo and then slow roasted for hours in a pit underground. Miriam took me to the little village of Yaxunah to show me that whole process. Now, it might seem super old school to cook pork in this way, but oh, when you taste it, it's so tender, a little bit smoky. You understand why this is the pinnacle of Yucatecan cooking. Cochinita pibil is typically served with fresh-made corn tortillas. And in Yaxunah, the women prepare those tortillas on large griddles over a wood fire. There is nothing like beautiful handmade tortillas with slow-roasted pork. Fresh corn tortillas, succulent meat, tangy pickled onions. Together, these three make up one of the most memorable flavor combinations you will ever find. Cochinita pibil at home without a pit in the ground. Well, you've got a couple of different options. One is just to do it as a simple slow-cooked dish that you do in the oven, and it's really delicious. It's absolutely worth doing. The other version is to employ your grill to do that, whether you're using a Kamado-style grill or a kettle grill, and slow cook in that. So I've got a boneless pork shoulder roast here, and I've got it in a bowl because I'm going to marinate it there. And the marinade, of course, is achiote. And the nice thing is that if you live by a Mexican grocery store, you can buy the achiote paste already made here. I'll need about half of this 3.5 ounce package of it. And I'm going to add to that a half a cup of fresh squeezed lime juice and a couple of teaspoons of salt. So we'll put that in there, and then I work these two together. Pour the dissolved achiote marinade over the pork. Smear it nicely over it. Next is banana leaves. You can buy a package of banana leaves in many well-stocked grocery stores that will be in the frozen food section. Once they've defrosted at room temperature, take them out of the package, unfold them, and then cut off that edge that was connected to the central rib. You'll need 6 leaves, each one about 2 feet long. Line your roasting pan with a couple of the banana leaves. Then place the pork in with all of its marinade. Then fold over the banana leaves to wrap up the pork and cover it with all of the remaining leaves. Okay, so now we have our packet made here with achiote marinated pork. We've got the charcoal lit in the grill. I'm going to open that up. Now, if you're working with a kettle-style grill, you're going to want to bank the coals to either side because we're going to cook this in an indirect method. On this Kamado-style grill, I'm going to put the plate setter in there. So I'm going to set it down right in here. And that just diffuses all of the heat up and around for slow cooking. Next, the grill grate goes on the top. And then we'll put the cochinita wrapped in its banana leaves. Now, if you happen to have one of these kinds of thermometers, I highly recommend them because you can judge the internal temperature of the meat without just guessing at it over a period of time. You insert the probe right into the meat like that, and then the thermometer itself stays on the exterior. I've set this for 190 degrees. That will be fall apart, tender, beautiful pork. Close the top here. Now I want to maintain about a 300-degree temperature in here, so I'm going to be working with the two vents, the one on the top and the air intake at the bottom, to regulate that temperature. It should take about 4 hours for us to reach the 190-degree internal temperature. Now next I'm going to make some pickled red onions, but I'm going to need a little bit of hot water for that. I'm going to slice first an onion, a red onion. That's what's typically used for this. Scoop that into a bowl and then cover it with boiling water. This is just off the boil now. After a couple of seconds, we'll want to tip off that water. This is just like a quick blanch. And then the remainder of that lime juice that I had here, about 1/4 cup, will get sprinkled over the top. A nice little sprinkling of salt as well, and then stir it and let it sit. We're going to let these sit until the pork is ready. Okay, now's the moment. After about an hour of cooking, I poured a couple of cups of water around here just to create some steam and keep it moist during that whole 4 hours of cooking time. And now the leaves come off of it. And we'll take the meat and cut it up. Transfer all the meat to the serving platter. Okay, back to the warm pan juices now. Swirl them around to make sure that everything has released from the bottom of the pot. I just like a very simple garnish on these of some of our quick pickled red onions. Now here's the moment I have been waiting for since we started. My perfect taco of cochinita will start, of course, with the meat, a little pickled red onion on top of that. I have a little habanero hot sauce to just drizzle a little bit over the top of it. And that's it. Taco of cochinita pibil. Salud. Okay, so I fired up your appetite. Some of my favorite dishes, entertaining tips, and Mexican travel inspirations. Well, now I want to hear what you have to say. Visit us at rickbayless.com/TV for recipes and a whole lot more.